Hello, everyone. This is the first episode of my new book review podcast. Today, the book I will be reviewing is Good Omens. Good Omens is about an angel and the devil, Azrael and Crowley, who try to stop the Antichrist and, in general, Armageddon and the end of the world. As a warning, I am not religious, I'm not Christian, I have not read the Bible, so I may not understand everything in here, and I'm sorry if I offend someone. I would rate this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked the theme it had of questioning right and wrong. I feel that it's a theme that is included in a lot of books, however, it's not the focus of most books that I read. However, I rate it 4 out of 5 stars instead of the full 5 stars because the writing style and I think maybe the theme of angels and devils, it wasn't really for me. I personally didn't like it as much as the setting or the writing style of other fantasy books I've read. And so generally, it's a good book. However, it's not my favorite book personally. Oh, in addition, this book includes multiple perspectives. As usual, it changes perspectives across chapters. And for me at least, it was easy to understand at the beginning where the perspectives of main characters such as, Azrael, Crowley, and the boy. In the beginning, it was easy to understand that, but later on, it became more confusing as they added more side characters that I didn't really understand how they were important. It sort of felt like they were just adding them for the sake of it. But it might also just be because I myself didn't read the book in one go. I read it across multiple months and may not have paid as much attention to it as I could have. And that was why, to me at least, the middle to end of the book was a bit more confusing because of the multiple perspectives. And in addition, about the characters, at the beginning of the book there is a character list, and next to each of the characters' names they will put in parentheses a small introduction of the character. So for example, Azrael, next to it says an angel, I think. And for Crowley, I think it says something along the lines of a demon who did not fall down from heaven so much as saunter vaguely downwards. And I really like this line because it characterized Crowley really accurately to me. Just like he's not legitimately like violent, bloodthirsty evil, he's more just so called evil in the sense of he's not purely good and he's kind of chaotic. So I really liked that description of Crowley. And in addition, I liked that the description of Adam's gang or the boys' gang was just a girl, a boy, because it seems like that's not as relevant. Like you're just telling us their genders, which we can probably tell from their names. However, it's interesting to me because it's basically just saying these are humans, and that's something that is kind of important to the book. At least I saw it kind of important when the book is about angels and demons fighting about like right and wrong. And in addition, I liked how for the four horse humans or horsemen of the apocalypse, originally I believe it's war, famine, death, and pestilence. However, in Good Omens, they replaced pestilence with pollution, which I think is interesting to me because I kind of imagine pestilence as disease. However, pollution is kind of seen as a more modern thing, and I like how it kind of shows how, like, some parts of hell at least have modernized with time. So that was also a detail that was interesting to me. Oh, and in addition, I really like the creativity involved in representing the ways that the four horsemen influence the world. Like before I said it used to be pestilence and now in Good Omens it's pollution, and I guess it's probably because of like vaccines and stuff would be the explanation. But yeah, it's interesting how they kind of like go along with it and kind of more just use loopholes that humanity creates. For example, pollution kind of just dumps oil from ships that humans create and oil that humans have chosen to use. While famine, he doesn't actually need to purposefully starve anyone. He just makes a dieting brand and it just kind of slowly kills people. And it was like really interesting to see how the demons got creative with their methods of harming people, I guess, as depressing as and concerning as that sounds. But it was interesting how they pointed out how dieting was a problem, but just no one realizes it. One quote that I really liked in the book was when arguing about whether heaven or hell should win at the end of the war, or the end of the world, I guess. As Raphael says, but after we win, life will be better. And Crowley argues that it won't be as interesting. And he proceeds to point out how all but two of the composers on Earth would end up in hell, and how all of the composers that I guess Azrael would prefer would go to hell. And it's interesting to me because it points out like the rigidity of heaven and how like even an angel doesn't think that all of these things are necessarily evil. So yeah, that was a quote that was kind of like interesting and maybe like surprisingly insightful for me at least. The one character I think I have some objections with in Good Omens would be War. In the book, War is characterized as a female, although it's pointed out that all of these non human creatures can shift between genders. War is characterized as female, and I can understand it as a way to demonstrate a woman as not stereotypically feminine. However, it does kind of rub me the wrong way because in Chinese history, which I'm more familiar with, many examples of women having power were examples of them being the main cause of, for example, the fall of a dynasty or the start of a war. If you want examples of this, there was Yang Yuhuan during the Tang Dynasty, who historians once blamed for the Anshi Rebellion. And there is also Bao Si from, I believe, the spring and autumn period, or the Warring States period, who was blamed for causing a war or somehow in a way related to the downfall of the Zhou dynasty. So, generally, women in power only being able to cause chaos kind of rubs me the wrong way because of my knowledge of history. However, I can understand that because creatures of hell are meant to wreak havoc, I can understand that it wasn't really meant as a way of sexism or blaming women only, but rather just a show of power in the form that demons or hellish beings are meant to show or expected to show. So, to end the podcast, in summary, I would rate Good Omens 4 out of 5 stars. It's a good book, however, I don't think it's for me. I really like the characterization of Azrael and Crowley and many other characters. The multiple perspectives are a bit confusing for me, most likely because of the context in which I read them in, and I have some objections about the characterization of War. However, I can also understand why she was characterized in this way and don't have super large issues with it. And that's all for this podcast episode. Bye.